Every time Stafford walks to the line, every time Matt Stafford walks to the line, he understands the why. Drake Maye is still trying to figure out, as I said last week, the what. What am I seeing? What is this? He didn't have the answers against Seattle. Stafford against Seattle tore him apart 3 times. Drake Maye overwhelmed. Chris Collinsworth appropriately said at halftime, Maye is not ready for this moment. Mike Vrabel at halftime seemed resigned to the fact his young quarterback was over his skis. He was nervous and he was rattled. And that's why I said, stop vomiting statistics and spewing analytics. Quarterback is about the why. Can you walk to the line like a Brady and a Manning and a Mahomes and a Stafford, and you have the answers to the test? I mean, I'm watching Stafford against this Seahawks defense, and he looks like Lewis Hamilton. Drake Maye yesterday looked like a student driver. He was completely overwhelmed. And New England's good. They're going to get better. It was almost understandable. But Stafford and Maye are just different quarterbacks and different human beings. Let's be honest. If Bo Nix was healthy, New England's probably not here. So, yes, Seattle had more talent. We did our top 10 rankings of the players last week. The top 4 players were all Seattle, including Darnold. But this was more than just, Stafford's got Puka Nacua. New England's tight ends and receivers are way above average. And yes, Will Campbell is not ready for this moment. He's probably going to get moved inside. He was the best tackle in a weak draft class. He's probably a really good guard.
All right, let's be clear. There's no necessity to engage in excessive criticism or mockery directed at Drake Maye at this moment. This performance was not representative of his finest hour. We can, without any reservation, attribute immense credit to the defensive unit of the Seattle Seahawks for their dominant showing. That is an indisputable fact. My perspective on this is particularly interesting because I previously stipulated that for the New England Patriots to emerge victorious in this contest, we would need to witness a performance of brilliance from Drake Maye. A significant portion of that brilliance, as I identified it, would need to be generated through his mobility. That was my paramount focal point. I explicitly stated that for the Patriots to secure this win, Maye would likely need to surpass Jalen Hurts' Super Bowl rushing record. The pathway wasn't predicated on connecting on deep shots to specific receivers. It was about his capacity to create with his legs. In retrospect, that assessment proved to be substantially accurate. He did not accomplish that. There were moments where he was sacked, tackled for significant losses, and simply found himself unable to generate the explosive plays necessary. Furthermore, there were specific throws that required execution, and he missed them, compounded by instances of questionable decision-making. One could point to discussions about his shoulder, but that does not exonerate or explain the poor choices he made at critical junctures. This dynamic is reminiscent of a point I highlighted during last year's Super Bowl. The discourse was saturated with discussions about offensive line play, but the critical distinction emerged when pressure materialized. When the pocket collapsed and plays broke down, the objective reality was that Jalen Hurts made plays. He delivered throws on the move, escaped pressure, and ripped off substantial gains of 18 or 19 yards. Conversely, Patrick Mahomes, in that specific game, turned the ball over via interceptions and fumbles. This is not an indictment of Mahomes' overall greatness. It is simply an acknowledgement that in that particular championship setting, he was unable to elevate his play to overcome the adversity, whereas Hurts did. It is not a declaration that Hurts can always rise to such occasions, but in that specific game, he did. In this Super Bowl, Drake Maye did not. He did not elevate. He did not make the throws or the improvisational plays required. It is crucial to understand that this is not solely about pre-snap diagnosis or having every answer at the line of scrimmage. The reality of modern NFL football is that very few quarterbacks operate with that level of complete pre-snap control. The game is too complex and defenses are too disguised. This is why observing a quarterback like a Kirk Cousins or a Phillip Rivers, or in the current context, the style of a Matthew Stafford, presents a different archetype. They operate within structure with unparalleled precision. This contrasts with the dynamic, off-script capabilities of players like Mahomes, Hurts, Josh Allen, or Lamar Jackson. It is simply a different methodological approach to playing the position, and both can be effective. Tom Brady represented the pinnacle of the former style. Therefore, I am not inclined to place the entirety of this loss squarely on Drake Maye's shoulders. His required task was explicit: make the necessary throws and utilize his mobility to create when structure failed. He was unable to fulfill that mandate. That is the distilled essence of his performance. There was no defining moment where he seized control. Examining the first half statistics is illustrative. 6 completions on 11 attempts for 52 yards. He was only officially sacked once, but he was under consistent duress. He could not generate any positive yardage on the ground, finishing the half with negative 40 rushing yards due to sacks and tackles for loss. He could not escape. He could not generate any positive momentum. It was an arduous uphill struggle from the outset. I genuinely do not attribute all of this to Maye personally. However, as someone who has been a vocal proponent of his elite potential, who believes he is a special talent destined to be a consistent, franchise-defining presence, someone I firmly believe will join that next echelon of quarterbacks as the Lamar Mahomes-Allen Burrow grouping eventually transitions, this game does not alter that conviction. No one will persuade me otherwise, and this single performance certainly will not. I am not suddenly going to pivot and question whether we overestimated him. That is not my position. Nevertheless, this Super Bowl presented a moment to solidify that burgeoning status, to prove his mettle on the absolute grandest stage. This is precisely why I drew the parallel to Jalen Hurts in a previous analysis. Hurts, in only his second full season as a starter, a similar point in his career to Maye now, saw his conventional run game neutralized in the Super Bowl. His response was to break the Super Bowl rushing record for a quarterback, make critical throws, and duel Patrick Mahomes. The parallels are actually quite striking. Hurts was in MVP conversation before an injury, dealt with a shoulder issue, missed games, entered the playoffs not at full health, and did not win the MVP award. Yet, in the Super Bowl, he rose to the occasion. In this game, Drake Maye simply did not. Again, I reiterate, I do not place the totality of the outcome on him alone, but it is challenging to review that game and pinpoint moments of individual brilliance that altered its course. Throughout the Patriots' playoff run, one could point to specific plays Maye made, against the Chargers, the Texans, even in the chaotic game against the Broncos, where his contribution was the definitive reason for victory. Those games served as perfect examples of why quarterback evaluation is nuanced, why a box score can be underwhelming, yet the quarterback was still the catalyst for winning. It is not a binary assessment. It changes weekly. Maye provided ample evidence this postseason that without his specific play on a critical down, victory would have been elusive. There were no such moments in this Super Bowl. The closest approximations occurred when the game was essentially decided, in the fourth quarter with the score 19-0. Those late statistics hit different, as they lacked the high-stakes context of a truly competitive moment. When an opportunity arose that could have brought the game to within one score, a terrible interception was thrown, a play where the broadcast commentator was visibly at a loss for a charitable explanation, ultimately concluding it was simply a poor decision. There were several throws throughout the contest that were nearly intercepted. Watching with family, I even remarked he had thrown it into what seemed like a defensive team meeting. The broadcast's response was similarly pointed. It is notable that this particular commentator is generally reluctant to criticize quarterbacks overtly. The demeanor and tone during the analysis of Maye's performance reminded me, quite distinctly, of the commentary during a Justin Fields game earlier this season, a sense of uncomfortable acknowledgement that the play simply was not at the requisite NFL standard. The commentator found himself in a position where he had to note, "You have to make that throw at this level." That was the atmosphere surrounding Maye's performance. Observations about missed opportunities, poor decisions, which cannot be blamed on a shoulder injury, and being fooled by defensive pressure. It was, by any objective measure, not a good game for Drake Maye. Both realities can coexist. One can commend an utterly dominant defensive performance by the Seahawks, while also acknowledging that the opposing quarterback did not play well, especially when there were identifiable, makeable plays left on the field. This differs from, say, Patrick Mahomes' situation in the previous Super Bowl, where the Eagles' defense schematically eliminated options to such a degree that there were few obvious missed plays. Here, with Maye, there were clear instances of errant throws and questionable choices. Despite this, I am categorically not moving on from Drake Maye or reassessing his foundational talent based on this single game. The current discourse seems intent on using this outcome to disparage him, claims that he is overrated, not battle-tested, or that the Patriots' path was facile. I reject all of those notions entirely. To me, Drake Maye remains unequivocally a bona fide top-tier quarterback in the NFL. I already classify him as an elite talent. The future for the New England Patriots, with him at the helm, could not appear more luminous. There is no question about that in my mind. Those are my reflections. I am exceedingly interested to hear your perspectives. What is your assessment of the New England Patriots and Drake Maye following this Super Bowl? Was the moment too immense for him at this stage of his career? Please share your thoughts below. I read every single comment. Whether you find yourself in agreement or passionate disagreement with my take, let's engage in discussion, let's debate, but ultimately, let's share in the analysis. Please consider subscribing to the channel. We are cultivating a fantastic community here, and I would be thrilled to have you participate. My aim is to build a space where we feel a genuine collective connection, a shared enthusiasm for the sport. I believe we are making significant progress toward that objective. Also, please remember to give this video a thumbs up, as it substantially assists with visibility and distribution within the platform's algorithmic framework. Thank you so much for your time and engagement. I will see you in the next video.